Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I'm here with my friend Jud Phillips from Capital Compliance Group. We're going to do a little bit of a licensing update and then have a quick chat about kind of grassroots advocacy and what that entails. How you doing today, Jud?
Hey, I am doing great, Adam. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well today. I also wanted to kind of point out for the audience today that Jud was actually my first guest on Receivables Roundtable and was one of the reasons I started because I saw all the videos he had been creating on LinkedIn, and it kind of sparked my creative juices and kind of got this whole thing kicked off. So Jud, I know you and I have talked about it before, but I wanted to kind of share that with the world because we're almost on episode 40 now, and I really appreciate that motivation.
Well, hey, thank you. And I got to get back in gear and start making my own videos again because I had COVID earlier this year and it just knocked me off the saddle, and we've gotten really busy. And then, but I got to do it again.
Nothing wrong with being busy. So I know we're going to do a quick licensing update and just talk about some of the changes that have been happening in 2021 in terms of state licensing. And I know specifically you had brought up California and Minnesota. Can you give us just kind of a quick update on what you're seeing in those states?
Sure. California's traditionally been an open border state. No more. They now have a licensing program in effect. And as of the end of this year, first of next year, you're going to have to be licensed if you're going to collect in California. And given California's regulatory attitude, that's one I wouldn't miss. I wouldn't play games. I wouldn't do anything. I'd go if you're collecting in California, get licensed. Interestingly enough, Minnesota also is a development in licensing. They are going to start a debt buyer's license, and that's also at the end of this year. And so that's sort of the two big things in licensing. And then the other issue in licensing, since the last time you and I talked, there's been an election, there's been a change in administration and a change in philosophy in administration. The Trump administration, whatever you want to say about them, good or bad, their regulators generally just went after the bad actors. Mm-hmm. The regulators under the Biden administration are much more aggressive. And I mean, honestly, let's be blunt here. If you are an unlicensed collector, that's low-hanging fruit for them. Sure. They will hit a home run with that and without any effort. So it's just, they're coming for you if you're not licensed. So be very, very careful.
So when you talk about California and Minnesota and you say that, that you have to be licensed by the end of the year, what does that mean? That means that you have to apply for the license or you have to apply for it sooner and be approved by that date. Do you know what the kind of rules are for those two states?
You're going to need to apply beforehand and have that approval in place on January 1st, 2022.
Oh, wow. Do you have any idea what the time? Well, I guess the timelines probably have not been established to this point. So it sounds like one of those things that's more of a sooner rather than later type of timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't gotten the final timeline yet on them, but it's coming soon. And as soon as it's available with all the details, such as the licensing fees, the application, et cetera, you got to jump on it pretty quick.
Sure. So I'm assuming that you'll be sharing that information on LinkedIn as you receive it. So for anybody that's not following Jud to this point, you might want to just follow him on LinkedIn so that you're seeing those updates as they come across. Now, the other thing that you and I had been talking about was licensing and how it applies to grassroots advocacy efforts. And I think that's a really interesting topic because although a lot of the debt collection regulations come from a national perspective, licensing is really a state-by-state basis. So I know that you also have a significant amount of experience when it comes to grassroots advocacy. So before we kind of talk about how licensing applies to grassroots advocacy, why don't you tell us a little bit about what that actually means in your experience with it?
Yeah, grassroots advocacy is really fairly simple. It's just at a citizen level, getting involved in talking with your state or talking with your representatives, be it at the city level, county level, or state level. And in the case of licensing, you've got the 50 states, plus you've got 5 cities that have some type of licensing requirement. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a debt collector, You need to be talking to these folks. One of the things I tell people, I'll be talking to folks and I'll ask them, who's your state representative? Who's your state senator?
Mhm.
And they'll look at me like, I have no idea. And my response to that is, if you're not on a first name basis with your state representative or state senator, you're screwing up big time.
Mhm.
Because here's the beauty of state, maybe with the exception of California, which has a full-time legislature, and that's a huge state, maybe Pennsylvania, same thing. There's no reason why you can't be on a first name basis with your state legislators. It's
Mhm.
retail politics. Their elections, those elections at the state Senate districts and state House districts, they're not decided by huge margins.
Mhm.
These guys are going to want to talk to you. They will want your vote. They will want your support. And a lot of times at the state representative level, including state Senate, state House,
Mhm.
uh, who are they hearing from? Most of the time, they're hearing from these quote consumer groups that are out there, saying, "Oh, debt collectors, they're just ripping off these consumers."
Mhm.
How often do they hear from the folks on our side? Not just debt collection agencies that provide jobs for people,
Mhm.
but also small businesses who depend on the revenue that is generated by the accounts that debt collection agencies recover for them. It's
Sure.
huge. And they just never hear that story, which is frustrating to say at the least.
Completely understood. So for those that are watching that want to get involved at their state level, what kind of activities or, how do you get started?
Um, you can work with, if you have a local group you can work with, that's great.
Mhm.
If not, get on Google. You can enter your address and say, who's my state representative? Who's my state senator? It'll come up for you real quick. Then you'll find their office number. Call them. I guarantee you, in almost every state, again, with the possible exception of maybe California and maybe Pennsylvania, you call your state rep or state senator up and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you to discuss a couple of issues that are of concern to me. I guarantee you, they're going to meet with you. I know a lot in my area, uh, virtually every state senator, every state rep that I know will do Friday and Saturday coffees with constituents.
Hmm.
You call them up, say, hey, I'd like to meet you. And they say, great, meet me at this local coffee house at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I've got half an hour for you. And they'll sit down and they'll discuss the issue with you. And again, the beauty as it deals with not only licensing, but let's go a little bit broader here to the debt collection industry itself.
Mhm.
They're not hearing from us. And that's why a lot of times you get really bad laws coming down.
Mhm.
One of my pet frustrations is I've been on some industry calls where I'll hear stories like, well, the usual suspects proposed a really bad law.
Mhm.
And we sent our lobbyist in and they negotiated a fabulous surrender. And the problem is, I have never once heard on any of these calls, hey, we got our local people involved. We got the local debt collectors, local employees, local supporters who derive benefit because their businesses are able to recover that income. I've never heard them say, we get our people involved and they went down and talked to their state representatives, state senators, and the bill died. Never heard that once.
So I can tell you from my experience with RMAI that is actually something that I've heard, and we're probably not always on the same calls, but that is something that the RMAI has really been pushing for lately is more involvement from the members within their local areas or their local jurisdictions, whether it be the state or some of the cities as well, and trying to improve the grassroots advocacy. Matter of fact, for the RMAI regional event that's going to be, I believe, September 28th in Atlanta, before the ball game this year. Similar to the Wrigley event that we had done in 2019, we're actually doing a grassroots advocacy kind of education session to give people more of a playbook on how to execute. I mean, the way you say it, you make it sound very, very simple. And I'm sure that if we can provide some additional tools to keep the messaging consistent across all of those types of contacts with the local legislators, it'll put us in a really great position to continue to advocate on behalf of the entire industry. And I think that's a really, kind of an important thing. And I'm excited that we're actually taking that on this year. I know personally, I'm going to have at least two or three people from my company there so that we can start becoming more involved in the state of Florida, even though Tallahassee is like 8 hours away from us. We see the value in it. And we also know that our state legislatures are often here, where our team is in either Palm Beach County or St. Lucie County. So I do think that it's something that's very important for us to address as an industry. And before you and I started preparing for today's session, I never really thought about it specifically from a licensing standpoint. I know licensing has been one of those topics that, the RMAI and I'm sure other trade associations have gotten involved in, but kind of the way that you put it to me really made it click that like licensing and advocacy or grassroots advocacy are really need to walk hand in hand, because that's where it's happening. It's not happening, at a federal level. It's happening at that state level or even at that local level, as you look at some of the larger municipalities that have put license requirements in place.
And something I can tell you from past experience,
Mhm.
I've done grassroots advocacy at the local level, at my state level, and even up at the federal level. Been up on Capitol Hill, and you'd be surprised how little it can take at times to kill a really bad bill. And
Mhm.
again, I don't want to belabor something I said earlier, but when the legislators are only hearing one side of this story, they go, "Oh, debt collectors are bad people." Well, when they hear the other side of the story, no, we're recovering revenue for small businesses that might not survive on Main Street
Mhm.
if it weren't for this recovered revenue. We're providing jobs. We're doing our job compliantly and correctly. And even in ideologically hard states, like I don't want to get into partisan politics, but in general terms, red states are easier from a compliance and licensing point of view than blue states.
Mhm.
Even in the blue states, you might run across a few legislators who are just ideologically hardcore, but your average legislator, they're just kind of, okay, I'll kind of go this way because I don't have any reason not to.
Well, it's an
And it's
education system, right? Like it's all about educating them on the value that's being provided by the industry so that they're not only hearing that one side, and they're understanding that we're keeping interest rates in check, that we're providing jobs and all of
yeah.
the other benefits that ultimately come from, these trade associations. And it's also, I think, helpful to educate them on the certification program for RMAI and for them to see that we are self-regulating and potentially to use some of those as the rulemaking process goes forward, because even this, the
Mhm.
CFPB and other organizations have, referenced it on numerous occasions because it does actually provide, a baseline for compliance.
Well, and part of this also is just, I'll be blunt, it's brass knuckle politics. When a state legislator generally, unless it's just a really hot button issue,
Mhm.
you can pick the issue, abortion, whatever. One of those hot button issues, yeah, their phones will ring off the wall. But when they start getting 3 or 4 phone calls or 3 or 4 meetings from people on some relatively obscure piece of legislation, their antenna go up and they start paying attention because that means there's something out there. And what are these guys at the end of the day? They're politicians. What do they want? They want to be reelected. How do they get reelected? They have voters who vote for them. They have donors who donate to them. And very few of them want to run counter, want to swim upstream because that's not a good way to get reelected.
Completely understood. And I think, I think as our organizations and our industry become more involved at the local level, that hopefully we can provide the level of education that we do to our own people, to the regulators, right, and the legislators, and help them to better understand the need, the essential role of the debt collector in a credit-based economy, because there is an essential role that we play, and it's not always the story that's going to make the most headlines, but it is a true and honest statement. And I think it's important that we continue to get that message out there. But I really appreciate you coming on today, Jud, and talking with me a little bit about some areas where I know that you are very passionate, being licensing and the grassroots advocacy. I think that's really important. I'm also very much looking forward to seeing you at the RMAI Executive Summit in Stowe, Vermont over the next couple of weeks here. It's getting close, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't believe how close it's getting. I'm going to be traveling up there on the 1st. It opens on the 2nd. And I'm looking forward to hanging out with you for a little while. My running joke is when I grow up, I want to be Adam Parks.
Well, I appreciate that.
But seriously, it's I'm looking forward to the event. I look forward again hanging out with you, seeing some old friends, meeting some new friends. And hey, if you're going to be there, if you want to talk about licensing, come see me. You want to talk about compliance, come see me. You want to talk about grassroots, come see me. Or if you want to talk about, I don't know, iced tea, come see me. Iced
The
tea, the
weather,
drink.
whatever. No, I look, you're a very social guy. I look forward to seeing you all over the conference. I fully expect that you'll be at all of the events. But, looking forward to seeing you up there. I think for today, for anybody watching from home, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them below. Both Jud and I will be responding to any comments in the thread here on LinkedIn. Also, if you have any other guests that you'd like to see me interview or topics that you'd like to see us cover, feel free to leave a comment below or shoot me a message. Always happy to take feedback from the audience in order to continue to create some decent content. But for now, Jud, thank you very much for your participation today. And I look forward to seeing you in person in just a couple of weeks.
Likewise. Take care.